on things to consider. Today we're going to talk about considerations in the use of Vortex Tube technology in dry machining, specifically tool cooling. I have in my hand the Vortex Tube. This is the Vortex Tube with a muffler. A muffler is required because they can be noisy without them. You have a hot end adjustable plug which controls the amount of compressed air that goes into a Vortex Tube coming out the hot end, and ultimately the rest of it comes out the cold end. The more air you let out the hot end, the lower the temperature at the cold end, but also the less flow at the cold end. So in designing a tool cooler, which is a packaged Vortex Tube, tool cooler comes with a nice magnet so you can stick it onto the machine very easily, and a hose to direct the cold air directly onto the cutting tool. But that tool cooler has the Vortex Tube preset to a certain amount of flow coming out the hot end and the rest of the flow going out the cold end at a certain temperature drop. It is set to an optimum flow rate and an optimum temperature drop, which is about 2 degrees above zero is what the temperature will be coming out, and the flow rate will be about 70-80% of the air coming out the cold end. There's a couple of reasons that's done that way. One is to give you the optimum cooling effect, and secondly, by having it slightly above 0 degrees, you're not going to have to worry about possible freezing in the line. So if you see anyone supplying any sort of a tool cooler that has a very low temperature, be very wary. It's not necessarily going to work any better, because that lower temperature also means less flow coming out. So your cooling rate may actually be a little bit less than having it set optimally. So be aware of that. Vortex Tube technology is ideal for cutting plastic, glass, ceramic, titanium, special materials, even textile. We had an application one time where a customer was manufacturing shirts, and the shirts were stacked up in a pile, and they had a knife basically cutting the shirts, a robotic system, and the tool cooler was used to cool the cutter. Worked very, very well, was able to speed up the operation. So all types of special applications for dry machining, Vortex tubes can be used, and very ideal for it. The temperature and the flow does affect the cooling rate. So if you have the temperature drop too much, your flow rate will also drop, and your actual cooling rate may actually not be as much. Now, having said that, there are some applications and some materials where you may actually want a very cold temperature, maybe -10 degrees Celsius. In that case, the tool cooler can be supplied with a different plug at the hot end, and it can be set to provide that -10 degrees. But recognize that your cooling rate will be less, so you might have to go to a higher capacity tool cooler in order to be able to supply the cooling rate that you need, but it can be done. So things to consider is obviously the flow rate, the temperature you have coming out, and the temperature that you actually need.